make sure that everybody that you had registered is up. We can get going. We can get going anyway.
Yeah, I think we'll get going anyway. I don't think we've got everybody quite yet, but their plans may have changed, so we'll see.
I will keep my eye on the admit room.
Always a good idea.
Yeah, all right. Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you for taking some time over the lunch hour extended to join us, check in, share some thoughts, and hear a few updates and all that good stuff. The virtual Arts Board's virtual town meeting 2021 series. This is number 3 of 4. And yeah, it's just nice to be able to touch base with you all. I do realize that it is the lunch hour and that some of you are eating, and yay you. If you feel comfortable sharing your faces in this time of working remotely, for so many of us, I for one really love seeing faces. So if you're willing to share yours, great. And if you're not, that's the last time I'm gonna say anything about it. And I will turn it over to George to get us started here.
Hello, everybody. I'm balancing the fact that I just got off a Teams call to jump to Zoom, so I'm remembering where everything is. And I'm also trying to put in the chat the questions du jour, so that you can have those for your use. It seems to me I can get the first 5 and I'll get the other 2 after I say hello. Welcome. You all know this is the Arts Board. The Arts Board is that 15-member board, of which we have some with us today, I'm happy to say. Brian Kelsey, John Potter, Bob Wagner. Let's see, anybody else from our crew? No. So we have board members here today to listen in on the conversation as they bring back to the Strategic Planning Committee the things they hear. And that's really what this is about, to listen into what you are experiencing on the ground in your communities, the questions that you have about what it is we do, and the comments that you have about what you think we should be doing, and know that they're going to take it all back. It's going to go into the machine and sift and winnow, and hopefully come out with a really great strategic plan for a future that none of us really can see quite so clearly right now. But that obviously you're seeing things on the ground that may lead us to a future, or you have ideas about exciting new things that could bring us to a future we haven't imagined yet. So we thank you, first of all, for being here today. And I will turn it back to Karen while I go search those other 2 questions to get into the chat.
Well, thank you for doing that. That's great. I am Karen Geschko. I'm the Assistant Director at the Wisconsin Arts Board. And because we have a reasonable number of people on this one, I'm going to ask that we do some quick introductions around the room. And I am going to start with just the order of the people on my screen. And I'm going to ask that as you introduce your name and your art form, organization, if you are affiliated with one, also talk about one, it's hard to think about pandemic and gifts, but this is what this ecosystem tends to do. We tend to find gifts in odd and challenging places. And so I'm going to ask you to talk about one gift that you feel that you have discovered or gotten over the last 18 months that you wouldn't have expected, perhaps. And Angie, the amazing picture of a ladder of Katz as your placeholder image, I'm going to ask you to begin. Thank you. Oh, and where you are geographically would be great too. Thanks.
My name is Angie Mitchell. Is that me making that much echo?
Nope.
No? Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay. Angie Mitchell. I am with the Roundtree Gallery in Platteville, down way in the southwest corner of the state. We are all volunteer nonprofit gallery. And I think one of the gifts that this pandemic has given us is the importance of arts in our community. We are a very, very rural community. We're kind of the only arts organization in Grant County and or the surrounding counties, Iowa, Lafayette. with kind of the caliber, and it's really just let us focus on what's really important for our 2022 and beyond calendars. So I think it's actually coalesced us as an organization, and helped us to just, I don't know, be a little more streamlined, as much as an all volunteer nonprofit can be.
Thank you. That's great. Brian, I'm going next to you.
I am Brian Kelsey, Managing Director with Peninsula Players Theater in Georgetown, Wisconsin. I have this background as behind me is not so much. I would say and I serve on the Wisconsin Arts Board. I'm a vice chair of the Wisconsin Arts Board and chair of the External Relations Committee, and serve on the Strategic Planning Committee. Something that I'm thankful for that came out of the pandemic is our team works remotely from the end of October through the beginning of May. So we all work out of our own homes. So I'm thankful for Zoom. I'm thankful that, we didn't have a hiccup when we had to convert to remote working. We were already doing it and we're used to it, but Zoom brought us closer together as we had an entire year of not seeing each other physically. So it was great to have this technology. And I think it brought communication from a board standpoint and from some of the organizations I serve on. I think it brought greater communication and that I think.
Thank you, Brian. Jennifer, I'm going to you next up in Lola. And you are muted.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Anderson from Lola Arts, which is located in Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin. We're on the border of the UP, so we're about 5 hours from Madison area. And we're in the midst of a big snowstorm right now, which is always fun. So anyway, I actually came on board during the pandemic. I came on board last September. So it's been, which was kind of a positive of that is things were slower. So I had more of a chance to kind of ease into things. And I would say one of the things that the wonderful things that has happened with the pandemic is we've been able to reach across the country with some programming because of Zoom. And so some of our regulars who are snowbirds have been able to join classes in the winter from California rather than staying in the snowy Land O'Lakes area.
Thank you. That's great. Beth, I'm going to turn to you next, please.
Hello, I'm Beth Tolles, Madison Opera, right here in Madison. And I would say one really positive thing that has come out of the pandemic is that we did over 40 digital programs during the past year. And one thing that we did is we shared them with most of the retirement communities beforehand so they could put it on their in-house channel so that you didn't need any technical knowledge. You didn't have to know how to bounce anything. You could turn on your TV. And the joy and the response that we got really sort of reinforced, what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we rediscovered that joy. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day struggle when you're a nonprofit, that we kind of lost sight of that. And just the responses we got from those folks, because they were in such a strict lockdown, really sort of reignited, that why we're truly doing it. So.
Great, thank you. John Potter, you are next.
Thank you, Karen. Calling in from Hudson, which is 24 miles east of Minneapolis, St. Paul. For all intents and purposes, we really are a suburb of the Twin Cities and get all of our information from there. So I really kind of both states, if you will. Retired after 35 years serving as the executive director of the Phipps Center for the Arts here in Hudson. Currently serving on the Arts Board as chair of the Budget Committee, as well as serving on the Strategic Planning Committee. I retired about a year and a half ago, and I had the wonderful opportunity of trying to get back into playing my trumpet after 45 years of not playing it. I had the opportunity of taking instruments home because you couldn't play them at the store. So I had 7 horns for a period of 4 months, and it was just a delight. So that's my happy story from the pandemic.
And you are still married. That is awesome. Okay. Amy Gilman, next.
I feel like that's a really hard act to follow. I did not return to the trumpet after many years. I'm Amy Gilman. I'm at the Chazen Museum of Art in Madison. And I would say that, echoing some things that have already been said, that probably the most important thing for me, the silver lining that has come out, is the idea of expanded idea of accessibility. And that streaming is not an add-on. That obviously, like during the lockdown, streaming was like the only. And now we are really moving back into, like, for example, tonight I'm doing a State of the Museum, which we are doing in person and streaming at the same time. And that's not something that's just because some people are still hesitant to come. It's actually because it's an accessibility thing now. And I think we will do fewer programs, but we will do them in multimodal ways. And that is I think that leap was going to happen, but I think COVID just basically like tipped everybody over the edge. So.
Indeed. Thank you. Erin, you're next on my screen.
Hello, I'm Aaron Shear. I'm the director of the Paint Art Center and Gardens in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I'm probably just going to echo some of the things that have been said, but like Beth said with the opera, that I think one of our kind of most gratifying things was the effusive gratitude we received from people with whatever we were able to do, whether that meant they were able to come to the property and visit us, or we're doing virtual programming. Just the feedback was very gratifying and was a reminder, like, oh yeah, this is why we do what we do, and it's more needed now than ever before. And then what Amy said too, we've had to innovate, and now we're realizing in many of the like small quirky ways, you just always do things the same way, but pandemic forced us to do it a little differently, and we're like, hey, this new way's better actually. And so again, from small to bigger things, and so that's definitely been a positive. It was a little painful getting there, but we're happy for the innovations.
Thank you, Erin. Megan, you are next on my screen.
Hello, my name is Megan Matthews, and I'm working with I'm on the board of the Whitewater Arts Alliance in Whitewater, Wisconsin, southeast corner of Wisconsin, and also tend to work with artists in the area of entrepreneurship and business and that kind of a thing through my teaching. I would say for the Arts Alliance, which is my biggest hat in this meeting, is I echo what many people said, was it gave us an opportunity to rethink how we provide our programming. That it wasn't oh my gosh, we can't do this, so we have to do this, but so this isn't going to work as well as it used to. What do we do to still do what is important to us? The big line, and I used it several times, was we're not changing why we're doing things, we're changing how we're doing things. And I totally stole that from a quote from someone in Minneapolis. I can't remember the organization, but it's not my quote. But it's that really helped me frame how we changed.
Thank you. That's great. Anne, you are next on my screen.
And me?
And you.
I didn't see it. And me. Good. Thank you, Karen. I'm Ann Katz. I'm Director of Arts Wisconsin. We're the state's community cultural development organization, all about advocacy, service, and development. And I'll just say that I have been in complete awe of the creativity and innovation that some of you that you've mentioned, and that has happened around the state in communities of all sizes, with not only arts organizations and arts people, but sort of all of us. That creativity is what has gotten us through the pandemic so far in ways that we are only beginning to understand. So I'm very grateful for as Megan just said, well, can't do it that way. What way can we do it? And that's been the spirit that I've seen around the state. And it's going to continue. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Anne. All right, Bob Wagner.
Thank you. I'm sort of the outsider because I've got a business that's not directly related to the arts, but I've been an arts appreciator for the last 40 years. So that's my connection, and I'm happy to see the things that are happening in spite of what's going on around the world, and that most arts organizations are surviving very creatively, which is the name of the game, creativity. And I just want to mention my appreciation of those efforts, because as a consumer, I'm so happy that we are continuing to move forward.
Awesome. Thank you. Amy Beck, I'm going to call on you next. Actually, I'm going to call on Gregory next. And Amy and Barbara, just so you know, we're just talking about who we are, if we have an art form or an arts organization that we're affiliated with, and one gift, expected or unexpected, from these last 18 months. And Gregory, you are next. Hey.
Hi, my name is Gregory Frederick. I'm here from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm a painter, so I'm grateful during this pandemic. I know it's been a terrible thing, but I'm getting closer to my family, and I have time to paint and connect with more of my patrons. I will say this is all I can say right now.
That's enough. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Amy Beck. I'm not sure where you went on my screen, but I saw your name. There you are. There you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Amy Beck from the Leakey Woods and Art Museum in Wausau. I would say the appreciation from the visitors who have visited throughout this time on a number of levels. Allowing space in the galleries to view things appropriately, distanced, and just the effusive comments, the appreciation that they extend. It is just gratifying, and that has been mentioned, but it is just a reminder of how not only visitors appreciate. I'll give you an example. Opening the Christian Robinson exhibition December 4th. During that time, there were 3 different groups that had met in the middle in Wausau. This young couple in their 20s, she came from the UP and he came from Rockford, Illinois, and they just kind of Googled where they were going to meet in the middle, and Art Museum, they were first-time visitors, and just had a great time seeing these children's book illustrations that are great for all ages. That same afternoon, a family north of the Twin Cities, somebody else in southern Wisconsin, they met in the middle. Again, they wanted to go to an art museum, first-time visitors. There were 2 pen pals that had corresponded for years, and they met here, common space. I think that appetite for getting together in a place that they can feel comfortable is strong, and just being inspired by artwork on view is such a bonus for people, that they're just really making a point of making that happen and creating those connections with each other too.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy.
Sure.
Those are great examples. And Barbara Lawton, I will call on you next. Glad you're able to join us today.
Oh, I'm so happy to see you all and other familiar faces on this. Thank you. I had the great privilege of chairing the Arts Board for 10 years, 11 years, because I remember Governor Walker left me on while he was trying to push us into a corner. But so I have this deep appreciation and understanding for arts in community, in every aspect of our lives across the state of Wisconsin. I see my friend Brian from where we spend a lot of time. And in the last year, I think we weren't alone. My husband and I weren't alone in learning how valuable, even as we are isolated from people, how valuable those personal connections are. And I feel like we, like a lot of people, reignited conversations, got better at making time for them and connecting directly with people. And I think that we'll see that continue, like at the Leiyaki, where we can meet friends in Wausau or wherever. But I think people are more intentional about staying connected now. Thank you for that.
Yeah, great. Thank you all very much. George, did you want to say anything in particular framing before we jump into the questions?
I'm hoping that you can hear me because my screen is jumping all around for no good reason. I think the most important thing to say is that the board undertakes a planning process every 3 years or so. We've been a little bit delayed this time around because of the pandemic. And it really is the opportunity for us to talk with people about what it is they're thinking, what they're feeling about what's going on in their community, and their questions for us about what's going on statewide or even nationally in our engagements, and really working to find out in our abilities, which are sometimes thought of as limited, but we think of them in many ways as limitless as far as the connections we can make, but prioritizing those connections, prioritizing the resources to do the best work for the arts in Wisconsin and for all the people of Wisconsin. So that's what leads us to today. Our strategic planning committee has formed the questions that you see in the chat. And I hope that you received them to an email today, that you might have had a chance to take a look at them. And Karen will lead us through the conversation today, which is really to hear from you. And as I say, if you've got questions directly about the Arts Board, we'll certainly respond. Either Karen or myself or one of the board members may respond, but otherwise it's to hear from you today.
Yeah, there is nothing like planning in a pandemic to make you sort of rethink your approach and question some assumptions and all of that good stuff. And I know that you all are doing your own version of planning, whether that is within the next week, within the next 6 months, within the next year. So as we ask these questions of you, and please know that you are invited to introduce your own questions, or actually before I ask the first question, I will invite you to offer up anything that you came hoping to say or hear. That would be great if you all want to put that out there in that space that I'm going to give you in just a minute. But as we think about this planning, we really are looking at things that we are that will be directing our efforts, sort of over the next 6 months and then year, and maybe some big picture 3 years. But the world is shifting on a regular basis right now, and so we're very cognizant of that. So any thoughts that you came wanting to make sure that we heard, or any questions that you wanted to make sure you had a chance to ask before I enter that first question space? All right. And for those of you type A's who like to, just put it out there via video and chime in with your voice, you are welcome to do that. For those who are not as comfortable, please feel free to put stuff in the chat too. We're monitoring that as well.
And
All
Karen,
right.
I was going to also note that this is not, of course, the only day that you can have a question or a comment. So feel free to email us after the fact. If something's tomorrow sparks in your mind and you say, I got to let the Arts Board know this, feel free to do that throughout the process, because it's all going to be important fodder for the decisions the board makes.
Yeah. And even if it's not tomorrow, but within the next week or a month or whatever, it's very definitely an ongoing process. Out of curiosity, and if those of you who have your cameras down, if you just want to keep them down but put a reaction up there, how many of you have received or are affiliated with an organization that has received a grant from the Arts Board? Okay. As we think about this first question, the focus is on beyond the grants, other than grant funds. How could the Arts Board be more relevant in your own community? How can we help you do what you are doing better?
Oh, I'll jump in here.
Yeah.
So Roundtree Gallery, to my knowledge, in the last several years has not received any money. Hopefully that will change as of tomorrow. But as an all volunteer nonprofit, we are ready to move to the next level. Like we've got, 5 people doing all this work for this gallery, and we have some funds, but not a ton. We want to take it to the next level. We need help with trying to have an endowment fund and fundraise on a larger level and really hire a part-time gallery director, help us manage our space, all of our marketing. We're all tapped, the 5 people that all have full-time jobs also. And so we need help in that regard, helping us get organized to take it to the next level.
That's really great. Thank you. Out of curiosity, we are, as most of you know, we are now kind of embedded within the Department of Tourism, and we have a very nice and collegial relationship with those great folks. And there are some very smart regional experts that help arts organizations and others with marketing strategies, et cetera. Angie, have you connected with them at all?
We were up for the Governor's Tourism Award earlier this year. We did not get it. Farm to Art got it, which is totally fine. They deserved it. But crickets.
So let's talk afterwards about that, because the person that is sort of in charge of your region has some great marketing and strategic thinking about helping with that. So
okay,
don't
perfect.
forget that. Okay, great.
Thank you.
I'm going to try not to do a quick response, as is my want, and just listen for this stuff. But it's hard. Any other overall questions, comments, whatever, before we jump in to the next one? Other than grant funds, any way we can help? Organizational development piece. Thank you, Angie. Okay. All righty. And again, if these questions spark some other ideas that are off topic, go ahead and put them out there. That's fine. I can reel us back in if we need to be. The next one is, what should the Arts Board be focusing on in the coming 6 months, year, 3 years? I see a second from Megan on organizational development. Great. And maybe, Megan, would you just clarify that a little bit, either in chat or verbally? Are you thinking like workshops? Are you thinking about how best to help with organizational development on a broad scale, as well as sort of one-on-ones?
I don't necessarily have a specific thing in mind, but what does come to mind is that, one of the famous quotes, and Anne uses it a lot, and I've heard, you and George at least make reference to it. People always think it's about, well, we just need more money. It's not always about more money. It's about understanding your community, and it's about understanding your resources and that kind of a thing. So helping people realize and think through, okay, so what have we not even considered as a partner? Who have we not even thought about as a partner? Because we just haven't, like someone made a reference to earlier, we haven't thought about working with them before. That wasn't the way we did stuff. And we too are looking at hiring a more robust position. We've got someone working 10, 15 hours a week. We want to hire someone who's 20. So, it's just like, how can we be more strategic with the resources we have? That's kind of, I know it's vague, but that's what I'm thinking.
No, that's great. Thank you. Brian, I see your hand up.
Karen, would this be a good time to talk? We've talked in the other 2 sessions about how we can work as an organization that helps to connect folks wherever they are in the state with other organizations that may have similar questions or
It absolutely would. And Brian, I'm going to encourage you to use your theater voice, even though you're not a guy who is on stage generally, because we're having a little.
I don't have my proper mic plugged in.
Busted. Okay. Well, while Brian goes, oh, so quick. Okay, great.
I just really, while Brian gets his act together, I think, Megan, you bring up something that in my history with the Arts Board and my continued awe of the deep expertise that George and Karen carry, that it's access to that, but it's, if they're willing to, and when they come into communities, what we saw were the potential for new partnerships and connections being made in those conversations. And it usually, because if they're coming to a community, there's a little bit of press, which elevates the arts in a different context and connects them to the state. I mean, it's unbelievably valuable. But yeah, I think that the force that they can be for networking and harvesting more from all of those connections is they've tried to do all that they can and all that is humanly possible, but I think it's a really important piece.
And Barbara, thank you for mentioning that, because it does help me articulate to myself, and we'll get this down, that it's easy when you're in the moment and you're just moving really fast to forget to encourage your host organization or yourself to connect with the media and say, hey, we're coming. And to do that. We do it really well for town meetings, but not necessarily the less public. And so
it's so important. Media, anytime that you're moving around at all, or even doing guidance for somebody, Zoom, right? A lot of small papers are looking for content, and it's just really important that the public understand the tremendous value they're getting for the few dollars that go your way.
Thank you. That's a great reminder.
Is it better now?
Brian, and
Okay.
then Megan. Yeah.
All right. Sound better?
Yes.
Okay. I have my proper mic on now. Where I was going with that is in other sessions we've talked about is not creating a buddy system, but it's not even a mentorship, but it creates a collective group of individuals who have the ability to have conversations, ask questions, share experiences. I know the professional theater group that I'm a member of, we meet monthly and we talk about everything under the sun that we're faced with in Wisconsin, including how we're going to handle vaccination requirements, et cetera, as we're reopening, et cetera. So I think there is an opportunity for the Arts Board to try to find a way to connect everyone, whether, and it's obviously, look at how we're meeting right now. We're from a variety of different places across the state. So it's still using the technology that's available, and whether it's hosted through the Wisconsin Arts Board or through just getting these organizations to come together and they can schedule their own meetings, but that they know each other exist and they can learn. And sometimes it's easier if you guys are from the other side of the state, so they don't feel as though they're sharing competitive knowledge with you. So it takes that whole mentality out and it just shares successes.
Yeah, thank you for that, Brian. Megan.
It occurred to me, and this is the teacher in me coming out, so I'll just put that out there. But I know we have arts peers. What if we offered some statewide marketing seminars, and you can do it virtually, right? I mean, just to that exact point, you don't have to be in face. I like face-to-face, and I know that this has been done in the past, so this is not even a new idea. It's just if you're looking for something specific that maybe we haven't done in a while, and then to Brian's point, you make those connections and you can start talking amongst each other. But what if we did something like that, where you offered or board development seminars, or I don't know, you could throw lots of ideas in there.
Yes, spoken like a true someone who's been working in this area as a consultant herself for quite some time. Thank you, Megan. It will surprise none of you that when the pandemic began in March of 2020, the Arts Board and Arts Wisconsin connected immediately and said, all right, let's do some listening sessions. Let's bring people together. Let's create some spaces. And in fact, with with Anne's patient persistence, we are scheduling some of those as a check back in January with some of those cohort groups and some broader ones. So this is a really good time to kind of think about that and approaching those as resource sessions. Jennifer, I see your hand, and George, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say, as people think of what Megan just said, if there are subject areas that they think would be of value to have those kind of workshops or conversations about, just drop them in the chat, would you please?
Thank you. Yes, use that chat. Jennifer, and then Amy, please.
Yes. First of all, I want to say that the website, the Wisconsin Arts Board's website, is a wealth of information. And anytime that I've also reached out to Karen or Anne or George, I've gotten a positive response immediately, actually. So I appreciate that. As a new person in this position in the last year, something that I really would enjoy, and maybe it's out there and I just haven't found it, but whether it be a Facebook group or a listserv, something where, at 10 o'clock at night when I wake up and I have this burning question that I could throw out. I've always found that type of thing helpful.
Thank you. And for Arts Wisconsin's sake, as well as for ours, I will just reiterate that Anne is awesome and is Arts Wisconsin and not Wisconsin Arts Board. And it's a conversation we always have. And so that idea of listserv is one that we started, Arts Wisconsin and the Wisconsin Arts Board started talking more seriously about in terms of cohort groups last spring. And Anne, can I turn to you for just a second and ask you to remind the group or let the group know what listservs are out there? I know there's a public art one. There's
yes. Yeah, thank you, Karen. I was going to see if I could have a chance to say that. We created a whole, Arts Wisconsin created them as part of the whole listening sessions that we were doing with the Arts Board. So we've got probably 10, maybe more topics, everything from public art to local arts organizations to music. I'm the first to admit that they're not very well used at the moment. We have to keep reminding people, but this is a good moment to keep reminding people that they exist. So Karen, maybe after this series of town halls are over, we can use your system to remind people that these topic areas are there for them to use.
And Anne, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat the link to some of those group IOs, that would be really helpful as well. Thank you. All right,
okay.
Jennifer, your hand is still up, but I'm assuming you are good. And I'm going to turn to Amy Gilman next.
So I have been also wondering if you all have ways of communicating about things that you have observed with other states' success stories, right?
Oh.
That might be useful tools for us. I realize that not every state is transferable, and Wisconsin is its own unique ball of wax, as all states are. But I feel like sometimes I feel like I am in a lot of conversations where I'm like, somebody has done this, right? And so I know, I know George has been doing this for a long time. I mean, you have colleagues in all over the place in the U.S. Is there a place that you would send us to, or is there a way of sort of communicating like these are some of the things that have been particularly successful in other places, or ways of advocating that have been particularly successful?
So depending on the topic area, right? So, here's a great resource for X. Oh, there's a conversation going on about Y here. If you're interested in connecting with new immigrant communities, there's an awesome resource and group conversation going here, that kind of thing. So could I ask you, Amy, to just, where did you go? I've lost you on my screen.
Sure, I'm right here.
That's great. Could I ask you to just talk for a minute about, like, when you have those conversations, someone else has done something surely along these lines already. What are one or two topics? Could you get a little more specific for me?
Sure. I'll just be really specific to the Chazen,
Right.
so this is pretty specific to our personal situation, right? We're embedded within a university whose mission is the Wisconsin idea, and I have a physical place, and it is, I can't be physically in all 72 counties of Wisconsin. I mean, you might argue that that would be something we could do, but that would change the fundamentals of our organization. So, like, one of the things I have been thinking about is, like, are there examples of, like, flagship university art museums that have really successful programs, partnering
Statewide.
maybe with some of the people on the screen, or otherwise, where, like, we provide value and, you know, we are resourced really differently. So there may, I mean, and I feel like this is one example of, like, I could make that up, right? I could reach out to any number of people who are on this call or any of the other town halls and be like, hey, let's partner. The museum is doing this project and we'd like to partner with you guys on it and help you reach your people and all that. But I also feel like, maybe there's a way for me to not feel like I'm just like the learning curve is so steep.
Yeah, and there's so many places to put your time and energy. It'd be nice to just take a model and adapt it for sure. I will put out there, you might want to look at Arkansas. And I would also just put out there that we've recently learned about a program. Caitlin may have known about it for a while, but like at least 3, if not 6, I can't remember, of the tribes and bands in Wisconsin have an art and science coordinator. And that's an interesting resource that I'd love for you to think about as you think about doing the work on a broader scale. George, yeah.
So a couple of things, Amy. One of them is, of course, the Arts News tends to do that and is organized by subject. So if we come across something, we're going to drop it in there for people to find. What we heard in a recent one of the town meetings was the notion of a matchmaker, right? So that the Arts Board becomes matchmaker. So if you say, I want to know something about this kind of project and is it being done anywhere else, that we'd put it out in the section of the news and through our social media, et cetera, and say, if anybody's got that, talk to Amy, right? And so it's sort of, I called it before, for those of you who know Wisconsin radio for a long time, it's sort of the ask your neighbor thing, right? So you call up and say, I really have this thing I want to know about. And sure enough, there's going to be a neighbor around who knows that. Well, in this instance, it'd be multiple channels that allow you to put that question out there and have it come back. The other thing I would say is, for us, the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies allows us a quick connect. So if you had a very specific geographic question and I want to know what's going on in South Dakota about all this, we'd be able to make that connect quickly. So there are a number of ways that we can provide that, but these meetings are helping us expand our thinking about how that might best be done.
For sure. Thank you. We're talking about partnerships in a way, so I'm going to jump into the next, hoping I'm not missing a hand here. I'm doing some multi-screening. I'm going to jump in the next question, which has to do about that. What, from your perspective and experience, what types of partnerships are most valuable to the advancement of the arts across Wisconsin? And if you want to go more regionally, how valuable to the advancement of the arts across your region? And then going a little deeper, how could those partnerships facilitate some of the goals that you have and that have been articulated here and in other places that would help your work? Types of partnerships. And these are partnerships that may not normally come to mind. Keitra, I'm going to welcome you. I just saw your square pop up here. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, and then Angie, I'm going to call on you for a response to what I just said. Thank you. Hey, Keitra.
Hey, thanks, Karen. I'm sorry I'm joining late. My name's Keitra Olson, and I'm the Rural Initiatives Manager for the Office of Rural Prosperity, which was an office that was created in early 2020. We're housed in WEDC, and we're really charged with supporting the vibrancy of rural communities. And that means, we get to work in everything from the biggie, right? Broadband to childcare, agriculture, and I get to do a lot of the work around creative economy and culture and placemaking. So I'm really happy to be able to listen in. Thank you.
Yeah, you're a resource that I want everybody on the call to know about if they don't already. And just as a reminder, WEDC is the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation.
And Karen,
Angie,
it's amazing the timing you have to bring in a partner when you're talking about partnerships. Well done.
Isn't that great?
To both of
Thank
you.
That's what I do. Okay, Angie.
So here at the Roundtree Gallery, we've kind of talked about finding a partner gallery elsewhere in the state that we could share artists with. We have a lot of, I would say, emerging artists in this rural community that might not understand how it all works. And if we had a partner also potentially in another rural area that we could share artists with, I think that would be a really nice opportunity for us. Maybe you guys already have that, and I'm sorry, because I'm completely new. It's my first arts board.
No, that's great.
Foray.
And would you, thank you for making a foray today. Would you talk just a little bit more, Angie, about what those emerging artist needs are that you're seeing and what kind of exchange or whatever you sort of envision?
Yeah, so we do a show that we're calling The Drift. We did one last year that was open to any artist within 100 miles of us. It was basically free if you were a member, $10 if you weren't. Super reasonable. There's all sorts of artists in the hills out here, and we're trying to pull them out. And so if we took that show and shared it elsewhere, I think it would give artists a lot of confidence that they could show it other places, just develop them as artists as well, and also give us an opportunity to show different artwork, something like that.
So maybe like a traveling galleries or traveling exhibit exchange sort of thing with local artists involved.
Yeah,
That's
or just like sister gallery kind of thing. You get that sister city stuff you see. It's kind of the same thing.
Yes, thank you. That's not a topic I have heard for a while. That's great. Thanks. I would be remiss, of course, if I didn't say, especially as you are on the western edge of our state, please, if you haven't yet, check out the resources that are amazing from the Springboard for the Arts out of the Twin Cities. Going onto their website, if you can gift yourself with an hour, it's a complete resource. It's astounding for artists. So I continue to fangirl whenever possible on that particular organization. Okay, any other thoughts on this one in terms of partnerships that you all haven't had a chance to express? All righty, then I'm going to move us to the next one. And that one is, as you think about the concept of a creative sector in your region, what needs to happen for the arts to become a more prominent and recognized contributor to your local, regional, and/or state economy? People talk about creative sector a lot in a number of different areas. They don't always take that conversation to a larger public realm. So when we talk about the economy, the creative economy isn't automatically a part of that conversation. If you have ideas on how to help make that a no-brainer, so that as people talk about the economics of their community or their region or this state, they automatically go to include creative economy work within that conversation.
You might also brag about some of the things you're already doing in this space that we may not already know about.
Yes, please do that as well, for sure. Heightening the arts in that conversation. it's a question that we grapple with, and so can't resist, pulling together the minds on this particular call, if y'all have any ideas.
Karen?
Yes.
Megan? I'm honestly not sure if this is something or if this is just stuff I get excited about. So we can push this off to the side, but when you talk about creative, economy and that kind of a thing, the idea of creativity, innovation, and curiosity in business is very, very big right now. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of those kinds of conversations in business schools. And so I don't know what the connection is, but could we be strategic or thoughtful or intentional or whatever about realizing that this is something they're beginning to be very, very interested in? Not even beginning, they are interested in it. They're developing courses in it, programs in it. Madison's got a program in it. Is there something we could do to connect to that? And I don't have an idea, but it's just, as you're talking, I know there's people who are interested in creative works and how does a creative economy support that interest that they're spending resources on.
What are the programs and courses that you have come across? You said Madison has one. What is that one?
Oh, it's with the Bowles Center. They did
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know the name. Actually, people on the call might know it better than I do.
It's okay.
But there's that, and I know that when you take a look at business schools across the country and in the state of Wisconsin too, there's several. Courses take a long time to actually launch just because of the system, but there's several people talking about how do I develop a course where, for instance, you may have a certificate in arts entrepreneurship or that kind of a thing. And again, without having tons more direct information, I don't want to mislead people, but it's just like, it seems like there's some synergy here. You just have to decide how to use it.
Thank you. It reminds me that around Wisconsin, we have a number of entities that support entrepreneurship, support innovation, are inventor groups, that kind of thing. And I wonder if anybody on this call kind of connects directly or indirectly with any of those, and what you think about them as potential partners in this, or at least resources within this broader conversation, and how we might connect a little more closely to those, or connect them into the conversation a little more closely, if that's worth doing.
Well, I mean, and maybe you didn't mean this question for me, but I'll throw like thoughts like the WEDC. I mean, Kietra, I don't know you yet, but you work. But I mean, when we talk about arts entrepreneurship and creative enterprise and those sorts of things, we talk about the WEDC. We talk about SBDC. We talk about those resources that are out there who can help creatives create these businesses. And again, businesses are looking for creative folks. And so how do we marry all of that? And again, I don't know that I answered your question directly, but as I saw Kietra, if I pronounced that right, I hope, then, I don't know, let's start having conversations with them. I mean, here in Whitewater, I talked to my SBDC guy. We have an innovation center out in the end of town, and I'm trying to develop some arts entrepreneurship stuff. And it's still very at its infancy stage, but what can we do?
Yeah, and connecting, making sure, I mean, I just sort of make the assumption that the SBDCs and the entrepreneurial clubs or groups or whatever are already talking, and perhaps that's not a safe assumption. So interesting, yeah. All right, other thoughts or responses along these lines? All righty, then I'm going to move us to the next one. How do you think the Arts Board could help you take advantage of the opportunities to serve and highlight the ever diversifying communities of our state? And I'll put it out there. I am explicitly interested in new immigrant communities, in communities of color, in all of in communities where we have people with disabilities as the sort of main focus of the of the work. So any and all of those, we are looking at diversity differently. Many arts organizations are than they were even 2-3 years ago, and looking at how to connect, engage, invite, and involve lots of different people within the communities that they may not have connected with directly before, or, you know, heaven forbid, develop programs for, not with, right? So how can we, as we look at the communities that arts groups are serving around Wisconsin, how can we help arts groups do that work even better? I'm not moving until someone answers, just so you know.
Well, I'll jump in. So Karen, I don't have great ideas for you, but I really like that goal. And I really think it's a great place to focus on. And through this whole conversation, I've just been thinking about how probably all or most of our organizations really need to be pushed and to grow in this area, and any help we can get, whether it's success stories with one another, challenges, or when you were talking about partnerships, helping us connect with organizations that could help us grow in these areas. I think anything big or small would be helpful and appreciated.
Erin, I love that you use the word push, because we are so cognizant of not wanting to over push, especially right now. Arts groups, through our grant programs, et cetera, we are interested in inspiring, but we also know that it's hard to be inspired when you have a whole lot of white noise going on and there's stuff that's right here, even though you know you should be focusing on stuff out there, right? So we're sort of walking that line between how do we encourage, when do we push. There are some places where we're just going to push, period, because we're a state arts agency and there are things that we require, but you all are pretty comfortable and familiar with those. Certainly the pain is. So any insight on and not necessarily now, but how we can maybe push a little bit, strongly encourage work a little bit. I'll tell you that right now, Caitlin and I are working on the language for the Creative Communities grants, the guidelines for that grant program. And we are wrestling with some language about that is, we've always said these grants need to be with communities, not for communities. So if you're sitting, in your organization and saying, hey, I have a great idea on how we can serve that group, and you don't talk with that group, you're probably not going to get a grant through that particular program. But if you are wanting to do a project and you're engaging people from different parts of your community because you want to serve your whole community, that's going to fare much better. We're wrestling with language that makes that even more overt. And so that's one area that we're going to be doing some stuff. But yeah, so thoughts on, again, not necessarily now, but thoughts on where you'd be willing to be pushed in the next, now in the next 6 months, whatever, and where you just want to be encouraged, and where you just want to have, hey, when I have a minute to think about this, here's some resources. I will say that there are a number of arts groups that are doing some really strong work in diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. And so thinking about connecting them into the conversation for maybe a more statewide conversation is one of the things that's on the list. George, you've unmuted. Did you want to jump in on this at all?
I think, Karen, what you just said is a nice extension of this conversation, which is, who are the organizations that we as the Arts Board can partner with to deliver the things that you described, the resources, the information, the knowledge, and the best practice to move people along this path. Because obviously there are state agencies that we can partner with from our unique vantage point, but there are others that might make sense there. And so I think as this conversation has been evolving today, even, it's who are those people, and so the why is to help the artists and organizations in this subject area, and the how is, again, we're not going to get to do it all by ourselves, but in partnership with others, and in this space, again, leveraging our unique place in state government to bring others like the health and family services and others like that to a conversation, and see where that goes. But going back to your original question to the group, it's also letting us know what kind of resource is going to be valuable, what kind of information is going to be valuable, because we know we're all in a different place on the continuum. You know, some groups are really down the line, having had this conversation for a long time. So some are just beginning to understand that they have to have that conversation, because our communities are different. But just because our communities are different doesn't mean we don't have diversity, equity, inclusion, and access that we need to be thinking about. So,
yeah, definitely. Thank you. Other thoughts on this before I move us to the next question? Alrighty. The next one is about arts ed. The Arts Board envisions arts education as an important part of every child's education. So what is the state of arts ed in your community? And how could the Arts Board work with you to achieve that version of having arts ed as an important part of every child's education? Goodbye, Amy. Thanks for joining us. Maybe we could take a bite out of the first part and say, do you know what the state of arts ed is in your community? Do you know whether there are requirements, how they're doing with the state standards, all of that stuff? Do you hear anything from teachers or students about, gosh, we wish there was more, gosh, we don't have any, gosh, what we have is awesome, gosh, we don't really rely on our schools, we just provide it ourselves? I mean, any thoughts on that? And John, feel free to pull from your FIPS experience, by the way, too, not to call you out, but just to call you out as I look around the screen at everyone.
I'll just toss out that the FIPS Center was deliberately used by the schools as a resource earlier in its history, and I think relied too much on the center, and has actually stepped up in recent years. So yeah, but we've always had that partnership in a I think that strong, and as I look across, I mean, there's so many examples across the state that have that strong partnership with the school systems.
Thank you. Jennifer, I'm looking at you and thinking about Lola and what you all do in terms of connecting with schools and K through 12 students. How is it from someone's perspective who is relatively new to that area or work?
Well, and it's very interesting because what's happening in our area is in the last year, because of the pandemic, we have a lot of younger people with families moving into the area to work remotely. And so, which is great for us. So we are trying to offer, now that we're more or less beyond the pandemic, trying to offer some more affordable classes, drop-in experiences for those younger people. And we are bringing back our homeschool art curriculum, which we had shut down because of the pandemic. And we also have some funding from some donations to bring some artist residencies into our school, which kind of landed in our lap too, because we were finding that people in the area really miss the arts and really want to support it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just a wonderful feeling up here right now.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, Beth.
Well, I just wanted to say that I personally feel like Madison has a very strong, arts education. One of the things that we tend to emphasize, and we do get schools that come to our student matinee for the student matinee program, and they've been prepped in advance and all of that, but they literally spend hours on a bus. They're coming from some of these small communities up north and down south. And I mean, they really go to a lot of trouble to get there. But we also think that a really big benefit of that, besides just the arts, is giving these kids access to buildings of civic prominence and letting them know that you are welcome here. That you're just as welcome in the Overture Center as this person or that person, and you're just as welcome to be a part of this community, as anything else. So we tend to think that that is also, maybe just as important as, what they're seeing on the stage. And we get lots of letters if they had their epiphany and this is what they're going to do for life and all this, and they're wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But we also think it's very important just to bring the kids and make them see that they're a part of that community and that they're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you for that, Beth. When you were talking, I had echoing in my ears a conversation that I had recently with someone else who said something similar, and then said, and what we're interested now in doing is, because the arts build bridges, is to, having brought them to us, invited them in, showed them this experience. Now we want to go to where they are. And we want to learn about their experience. And we want to know where there are I'm going to use that word, intersectionality, just used it, because there is power
Bingo.
to that. There's power to that. And so I'm not like pushing the Madison Opera to do that. There's a real interesting synchronicity in these conversations that are moving us toward that intersectionality. I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Beth.
Things that we do every season, and again, it's wonderful because you get some really super responses, is we work with the Odyssey Project, and what those individuals take from what they're seeing on the stage, how that resonates to their personal experience and personal struggles, and whether it be that they're, new to the country or whatever it is, or if we had one woman that related to being an abused woman, whatever they take away from that, it's so wonderful to have those conversations. And I think that that's really an important thing too. Can we take a fully staged grand opera and a full symphony orchestra on the road? No, but we can have conversations, and we do. And we try to maintain a consistency so that these programs know that every season, this is what we're going to be doing, and that they're very welcome. So we don't do children, but we do, I take that back. We do high school, but asking an elementary school student to sit through a 3-hour opera would just be not good for anybody. So, we don't go down that way.
Along the lines of taking that fully staged opera and symphony, when the Arts Board has $100 million in its budget, we'll come back to you. We'll come back to you and we'll have a conversation. You know what? When we have 50 million, we'll come back.
Okay, done.
From your lips to God's ears.
Done.
All righty. This is, any other thoughts about Arts Ed? Any other thoughts about any of these questions to this point? George.
I have a question for Aaron to explore the question that you wrote earlier in writing about where we rank and all of that.
Oh,
so
yes, thank you.
Would you explore that for a second so we can all talk about it?
I'm sorry, you're asking Aaron too? You're asking me too?
I'm asking Aaron, yeah.
Oh.
I had just asked George by email a curiosity question of kind of where Wisconsin ranks as far as state agency funding to per capita was. And I know I've seen those stats a long, long time ago, but I haven't seen them for years and years, and I'm just curious if things have gotten better or worse. I have a theory it's been worse, but I just wondered what that is, and yeah, what that kind of historically has been and how it looks now.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking of that $50 million budget, George, why don't you jump in and then invite Brian at a certain point too? That would be
Sure. So the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies is the group that does this study each year by taking the state agency budgets and dividing them by the population and coming up with the numbers. Wisconsin has been, in my time at the Arts Board, which is now approaching 30 years, has been as high as 30 and has been as low as 50 as far as rank is concerned. So the current situation is we rank 49th out of 50. And the reason we rank 49th instead of 50th is that Arizona defunded its state arts agencies. So they're at 0. So the next step up is us. We are at 14 cents per capita. So 14 cents per person is the number that we are receiving from the state government. Now, we all know that there are other dollars that flow to artists and arts organizations. They come from corporations, small businesses, foundations, individuals. That's not what's measured here. We're simply measuring dollars to state arts agencies from the legislature. The number that's often compared, because we are geographically proximate and we are also have a similar size of population, is Minnesota. Minnesota, because it has what they call the Legacy Amendment, which is they tax themselves for clean water, conservation, and the arts and culture. That number in Minnesota per capita is $7 a person. Now, you do that again, $7 per person versus 14 cents. It's amazing, not only what we do, but what you all do, given the numbers that are coming our direction. Arts Wisconsin, and I'm sure Ann will want to weigh in on this after Brian, we are all working to make sure that those numbers increase. But the reality is we educate, Arts Wisconsin advocates, and hopefully so do you. So when you have the opportunity to speak to your legislators, and we encourage you through those of you who receive grants through your final reports to show us the letters that you've written to the legislature to prove your public value. Because one of the things we know for certain is the number will not grow unless the legislature understands that you are meeting a need that their constituents feel is out there. And so in expressing your public value and those meeting of those needs is really, really important. Brian, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a whole lot more to add, George. I mean, you hit all the highlights. Aaron and those on the call, we do our best through external relations to reach out lowercase advocacy, where Ann is uppercase advocacy, to advocate for the funding of the arts. We have one-sheeters that we have sent to the legislators, and we're getting ready to do again, which shows the value, the amount of Wisconsin Arts Board funding through grants that their community or their constituents has received. And if it's an area that happens to have 0, we let them know they've received $0, and we give the total all budget size. We talk about the National Endowment for the Arts match, etc. But it's really trying to get them to understand. We also give them a list of who's received grants, the grant dollar amounts, so that if they want to reach out, we also let those organizations in those communities know that we have reached out to the legislators to let them know. There are some in the communities which are better than others. I know our state representative, Joel Kitchens, writes to us before we even have a chance to write to him, and he congratulates us on our grant that we received through creation and presentation. So some are connected at different levels throughout the legislative process. But I think the biggest point we can make is we are 49th. We were 50th until Arizona defunded. and then we dropped. So I think that is the biggest point. And we're getting ready to turn 50. And the last thing we ever wanted to think of was being 50th at 50. That's not what we want our message to be. So there's certainly work to be done in increasing the level of funding that we receive.
And Ann, just before you jump in, let me clarify two things too. We're really making this distinction between educating and advocating, because as an executive branch agency attached now through tourism, when the governor sets the amount in his budget, we are not in a position to advocate beyond that number, right? So as a state agency, the governor sets the number here, that's the number we can talk about. Should there need to be more, that's where advocacy comes in. And that's why a group like Arts Wisconsin and your work, the arts industry through Arts Wisconsin becomes very important. And I just wanted to give you an up to the moment sort of snapshot of why this is all very important. So the Arts Board receives every year a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. Prior to 2011, it was the state invested $2.4 million, and the federal government provided a grant of $800,000, and that was basically the federal government supplementing the work and the investment of the state of Wisconsin. Since 2011, our budget went from 2.4 on the state side down to a direct match with the National Endowment. Since 2011, I'm happy to say that the NEA has continued to inch up, right? A little bit. It's not been huge numbers, but incrementally they're going up. Remember, 40% of whatever the endowment gets is divided among the state agencies. So if they go up, we go up. And that's what's been happening. The challenge is, of course, by the way, the quirks of the state budget system, the endowment goes up, our number on paper in the state budget is here. There's a gap.
Right.
Right now, that gap is $109,200. $109,200. Remember, the state's got a budget surplus right now of $2.5 billion, and it's a state budget, biennial budget of 78, I think it is, $billion. What's a couple billion between friends? If it's not 78, it's in that ballpark. So what we're talking about is a process where we have to go to joint finance and say, please, sir, as Oliver Twist would say, we need some more. We need $109,200 to match the National Endowment for the Arts so we can draw down all the money we have rightfully earned through our great application that Karen wrote for us. And they said, yes, please, we want to give you money. Now, that process is going to come up, we hope, sometime soon. In that process, what that means to you, if you're a creation and presentation applicant, it means you're going to be delayed in receiving your funding because we're in a situation now where the state funds 3 positions and a little bit of other supplies and services. All of the rest of our money goes out in grants from the state. And so if they don't match, not only will we lose the fact that we didn't get the 109 from them, but we'll lose the 109.2 from the feds. That's a long way to go to tell you a story that says we've got work to be done, and that work is ongoing as we speak, to ask joint finance not only to do this, but first of all, to take it up. Once they've taken it up, then they can have the conversation as to how they want to do that. And Katz.
I'll follow up. That story illustrates the politics under which we live in Wisconsin at the moment. It's hard. It's not impossible, but it's hard to focus on long-term growth when you're dealing with this kind of short-term stuff. And so Arts Wisconsin, as the advocacy organization, is involved in advocacy with a large capital A, which is the lobbying that we do. And we engage a team of lobbyists to be in the Capitol on our behalf, and with small a advocacy, which is the education and the the contacts that you all do to make sure that your decision makers on any level know about the good work you're doing. Having worked with politicians on all sides over the last 25 years, I can tell you that there isn't anybody who doesn't understand the public value of the arts. What we are working continuously on is the integration, the awareness that the arts are not something that's separate over here, and that everything else in the world is here, and the arts are not worth funding because they're just the arts. But the impact of the arts economically, educationally, and civically is what we stress. So the biggest number that we use on a regular basis is the fact that the U.S. Department of Commerce, before the pandemic, found that the creative industries in Wisconsin had a 10.9 billion, that's billion with a B, dollar economic impact, with over 96,000 jobs, which is more jobs than the state's beer, biotech, and paper-making industries. When you combine that kind of data with the stories that you all have, that you're all telling, that's very powerful. And we keep pushing those stories and telling your stories every day. I can tell you that George and I say that we've been talking about the creative economy since the last millennium, and now people are actually paying attention to it. So that's a good step. We are working on funding, getting funding from the legislature for creative economy development and arts support. We're also working on the governor for ARPA funds, which of course is a short-term thing, but it's important. And so we're out there working with you to tell those stories. And it's not easy. We do live in a pretty toxic political environment, but there isn't anybody who doesn't understand what their communities, their districts need, which is what you're all doing. We just have to keep figuring out how to get past the politics to get these things done. So I remain relentlessly optimistic because of your good work. Thanks, George.
You bet.
Thank you for that, you guys, as we're talking about budgets and partnerships and all of that good stuff. We have 7 more minutes, and I just want to check to see whether there's any burning, first of all, responses or questions or anything related to what you just heard. And then I'm going to do something, hopefully it won't be considered mean, but if we don't have anyone who wants to share some of those, I would really like to turn to Gregory as an individual artist working in Green Bay, just to get your take, Gregory, on how things are going there for individual artists. What's working, what needs you have experienced yourself or seen from others, all that good stuff, and how a state arts agency might be able to help.
Well, from Green Bay, it's kind of like, I would say it's kind of difficult for a lot of artists here. So you have to make a name for yourself here. Like, you have to get involved in the community, for me, I'm a full-time artist. So I work with a lot of organizations in the community. So again, I made my name for myself, as my wife working with me. So you have to have a team to work as an artist in Green Bay. Individual artists, if you don't have someone to helping you out, like, let's say, if you don't have someone can dealing with your computer wise for you, or reach out for the source, and then for you to have time to paint and create other connections, it's kind of difficult. As mules, they have a lot of mules done in the community. Again, the community is kind of like very going open up. Again, when we were talking about the source of the money, so it's difficult to get fund for the art in the community. So it's not easy for a lot of artists. Again, if you don't make a name for yourself, you don't get out there, it's not that easy at all.
Yeah, understood. And one thing I just heard you say, a bunch of things, but one thing I heard you say was it might be helpful to have some kind of business support for artists. So if you're having computer problems, to have a place where artists can go to just, sort of the one-stop shop instead of every artist have to figure out for themselves where they might be able to go, that kind of thing. I mentioned Springboard for the Arts out of the Twin Cities, and they have some really great resources for individual artists. You also, I think, Beth Lemke at the Neville Public Museum mentioned that there's a strong group of artists and kind of a listserv that comes together periodically. Have you connected in with a kind of individual artists in Green Bay? Is that still happening? And I know it's hard in a pandemic to answer that question. But.
Well, yes, we are connected. So if we can't meet, we always have a Zoom meeting and things like that. So now things are reopened again. So yeah, we're still connected. They have other places in the community too. Artists can reach out, like the Art Garage. It's another organization, non-profit organization. People meet every time and have opening reception. And the Neville Public Museum right now, I'm a member of the Neville, and you keep connected. The artists are connected, but the thing is we don't really have enough resource for the artists to survive. For me, I'm doing art shows. I travel all over Midwest and showing my work and have a website. A lot of artists don't have that opportunities. Yeah. Again, they don't know exactly where to get that connection. Sometimes it's kind of difficult for them, May I have I am a full-time artist, so I have to get myself out there somehow to get that resource to survive, because it's not that easy, especially in the community. But I think the artists right here, so as we connected, so like I know some information and pass it on. Again, when they know something, they pass it on, and then we're helping each other at some point to let the community go. So
thank you. I really appreciate you being willing to answer a question out of the blue like that.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of thank you all for sharing an hour and a half with us. Just it's so helpful to keep us focused and to know the different perspectives that are out there, different ideas, different resources, different stories. George, did you want to say something before we wish everyone a wonderful afternoon?
Nothing more than what you said. Thank you is all.
Yes.
The gratitude is we are full of gratitude for your time.
And please remember George's invite. If you do have other thoughts, ideas, questions, or whatever, don't hesitate to email them. That's really the best way to get a hold of us right now. And with that, thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
take care.